You don't trust
We
me.
have to be careful. The Americans are getting jumpy. They've given you access to some very sensitive information.
This is not who he is. He needs to remember his life. You have to fix him.
You should hear what they say about him at court. How he mistakes the earth for a side of beef. So he puts it on a spit and roasts it in the sun's fire.
Forget trying to kill tumors. You've created a cell that gets them to fall on their swords and die.
Dr. Feynman, you singled out Krista McCullough. Why?
Because she wanted to teach kids how beautiful the world is.
If you enjoy science and great storytelling, we've got you covered. This is the Relativity series from LA Theater Works and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, bridging science and the arts in the modern world. Hi again. I'm Ron Lipkin, senior radio producer for LA Theater Works. Do you remember the spill cam? Its footage was all over our screens in 2010, showing us an underwater geyser of oil spilling out into the Gulf of Mexico. In April of 2010, British Petroleum gave orders to speed up production on its colossal drilling rig, the Deepwater Horizon. Despite the objections of many on the rig, safety measures were ignored or overlooked. On April 20th, the Deepwater Horizon exploded. 11 men paid the ultimate price, and countless thousands who call the Gulf Coast home found their lives irrevocably altered. Based on actual interviews and testimony, Leigh Fondakowski has created a chilling and intimate look at the people and the ecosystem affected by the incident. This is Spill by Leigh Fondakowski, starring Elisa Bocanegra, Gilbert Glenn Brown, Nicholas Hormann, Travis Johns, Jane Kaczmarek, James Morrison, Darren Richardson, Kate Steele, and Mark Jude Sullivan. Directed by Martin Jarvis.
It's a long drive to Blessing. Flat, wide open, miles of open space just to think. Blessing, Texas. A place not commonly found on GPS. The only directions I have are to keep driving until you reach the blinking light. When I ask for a street name or something, I'm told,
"Don't worry, honey. You can't miss it. It's the only light in town."
the restaurant at the Blinking Light in Blessing is a local favorite. Type of place where the regulars hang their coffee cups on the wall and everyone helps themselves to coffee. You know that place. Type of place where they treat a total stranger walking in like family. This is where Shelley Anderson wants to meet and talk. The first of a series of interviews collected in the aftermath of the spill.
That's not an easy question for me to answer. It's personal, if you know what I mean. Sometimes it feels like the whole world just moved on without you, but you just can't move on. You're stuck somewhere you don't want to be. I don't always know how to make it work without him. Jason was more than just a paycheck and the guy who takes out the trash. He was my soulmate. And now, this is not the life I wanted, not the life I signed on for, but it's the one I got.
What can you tell me about Jason?
Well, Jason was the type of man who used to pull the truck over to the side of the road when our song came on, just to kiss me. That's the type of man he was. You make a lot of sacrifices when someone you love spends half their life offshore, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. But Jason loved what he did. He loved his job. He had only one step to go to make rig manager, one step. He was even asked to teach well control in Houston, but he didn't take it. He didn't take it because he wanted to be able to say that he had done every job on that rig, from deckhand to rig manager, from the bottom all the way to the top. Offshore drilling was his life. We even had a cake shaped like an oil rig for our wedding. That was something to see. We had fixed it up so it looked like it was drilling for Miller Lights. That was the happiest day of my life.
Did Jason ever tell you that they were having trouble on that rig?
No, he did not. I only knew after.
Anything out of the ordinary? Anything at all before that last hitch?
I don't know. Jason and the guys went gambling at L'Auberge Casino in Lake Charles right before their last hitch. BP was paying the bill. The bar bill and the room charges were outrageous. The wives were all there. Most of the downtime was spent in the casino. Jason learned craps. I found him gambling at the table, and there he was betting $20. I said, Jason, we need that $20. That's a lot of money. You can't get that back.
Place your bets. Dice around.
$20 on a hard 8 with a new shooter.
25 on a hard 10.
50 on a hard 6.
5 and 9.
10 on hard 4.
6 and 8.
Hard 8!
Press
Give it to him.
Another hard 8!
He's on
He won. That never happened again. But as long as he kept playing, the beer was free.
And if I get stoned and drink all night long, it's a family tradition.
The staff at the casino still remembers that night. The guys were all drunk and having a good time.
Why would BP send those men off to gamble right before that last hitch?
I guess they were blowing off steam because they were all really stressed about this job. I just didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it because Jason never told me about any trouble on that rig. When he was home with me, he was home with me, and he didn't talk about the rig. But I do remember this. On the ride to the airport the next day, Jason drove the truck. Usually I drove so he could sleep, but that day he wanted to drive. And before he got out of the truck, he looked at me and he said,
Shelley, if anything were to happen to me out there on that rig, would you and the kids stay in the house?
Jason, you're scaring me.
Just tell me.
Well, probably not. If I met someone else and remarried, I wouldn't do that. You're all over that house. That house is your house. It wouldn't be fair to the new man. And then I said, but let me be clear. I don't want a new man, okay? I don't want a new man.
Well, that's good, because I don't want to look down from heaven and see you making love to no new man either. Especially not in my own house. That would kill me twice.
And we both laughed. That was so Jason. He made me laugh every day. That's a good reason to get married. And then he just looked at me, and he smiled that crooked smile with his eyes barely open. As an offshore wife, you understand the risks. It's a high-risk job. Life or death. We all know that. But you never think it's going to happen to you. Not you, not your guy. Your mind just tells you he'll make it. He'll make it through.
I think about those 11 men and listen to their wives talk, and that could be my wife, too, because I spent my whole life in this industry.
Bob B., engineer and a former offshore rig man.
I've worked in 72 countries, and I've lived in 11 different countries, so I know this business pretty well. Matter of fact, I helped bring this industry offshore, helped design and build some of those structures that you see out there today in the Gulf of Mexico, like an oil city on the water. They called me the Boy Wonder because I designed and built one of the first offshore rigs. I was the Boy Wonder, all right, until it blew out. We had to learn how to turn failure into success. That's a good trick to learn. But if you really want to understand the oil industry from the inside, feel its heartbeat, the person you ought to talk to is my good friend, Lillian Miller. She's part of my team. Industry professionals helping me to investigate what went wrong out there on that rig. Tell her I sent you. She lives in Lafayette. Interesting woman, spent 7 years offshore, a former roustabout herself, just like me.
Lillian was there to greet me at the door. She walked me in, and on her dining room table there was a map of the Gulf of Mexico. I noticed that her hands looked much older than her face as she pointed to the spot where the Deepwater Horizon went down. She said, "This is it, Mississippi Canyon 252. This is the precise location of the Macondo well. That's where the Deepwater Horizon was located when the blowout occurred. Right here. 48 miles offshore, that's Macondo, otherwise known as the Well from Hell. The name Macondo was taken from the Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel, 100 Years of Solitude. Oh, all the wells out there have names. Bet you didn't know that. When I started out my career offshore, the only place a woman could work was in the galley. The kitchen. But I was going to change that, and let me tell you what, I did. My first flight out, I was terrified. Then I saw this majestic rig. Like a castle in the sea, a multi-million-dollar castle in the middle of the sea. hear the waves 24 hours a day, go to bed at night with the rig rocking. You look out at the most incredible sunsets and sunrises. It was like looking into the face of God. And let me tell you what, these new rigs out there are more complex than a space shuttle. It was actually easier for that space shuttle to take off and connect to the International Space Station than it is to drill a well in deep water. You see, a well is a living thing. It's a real live creature. It moves and it breathes and it speaks to people. And the job of the rig worker is to listen to it. And sometimes it kicks, which means gas is coming up the riser from deep in the earth. It means the well is almost blowing out, so that you have to weigh it up with drilling fluid. It's called mud, to keep it from coming all the way up. It's like breaking a wild horse. I mean, if you don't have control over this creature, this living creature, it will kill you. 11 dead. More than 100 survived, but a couple of them are on suicide watch. One of them right here in Lafayette. There is no remorse to the well.
You look at those 11 men. I got their pictures right here in my office. Here, this is Shane Rostow, a 22-year-old intelligent young man. He reminds me of me because that's where I was at that time in my life. Young father, roustabout. And so you're saying, Shane, were you taught to deal with this space vehicle? No. Shane, were you taught to deal with this space vehicle as something bad starts to go wrong? No. I sit and stare at his picture sometimes. Shane used to joke that he was oil field trash.
The oil field gave me my life, but it's gonna take my life too.
Now, I heard that before that last hitch, he told his wife,
Baby, the earth is like a red balloon, and drilling is like taking a pin and just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and it just blowing. Mississippi Canyon 252, you know, Mother Nature just don't want to be drilled here. She just don't want to be drilled here.
I look at those pictures of those men and I say, I'm really sorry we had to have you give your lives this way. All of them. Not just Shane, but also
Jason Anderson.
Dale Burkeen.
Donald Clark.
Stephen Curtis. Gordon Jones.
Wyatt Kemp.
Carl Kleppinger.
Blair Manuel.
Dewey Rivette. Adam Weise.
You get to know those names. Now, you said you were going to speak to Adam Weise's mother, Arleen. I think she's a good place to start. Try her salon.
My son Adam didn't like being away from home. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, all that, but he loved the money. Adam was a prankster. He always was. He used to ride around town in his truck. It was one of them jacked up trucks, you know. He always wanted one, and he got one. I called it the Big Nasty. I don't even know what went on in that truck, but it was big, it was black, and it was nasty. Adam had a train blowhorn fixed to the top of it, so there was no doubt when he was coming. He used to scare the hell out of people with that damn train horn. One time, though, he got me real good. I was doing hair at my beauty shop, just like I do most days, and all of a sudden I hear this commotion outside.
Mrs. Arleen Weise! Mrs. Arleen Weise! You come out of that beauty shop, come out with your hands up!
I'm in there thinking, what did I do? But I fell for it. I stick my head out the door and there's him and his friend laughing their asses off with that blowhorn. I said, stop it! He can still make me laugh. Every day with Adam was like that. Adam had done real well for himself. He always said the same thing.
I'm working for your retirement, Mom.
That's what he told me all the time. My life's always been to go to work to pay my bills, 9 hours a day straight through. Lunch break was very seldom. So I'm working for your retirement, Mom. That sounded good to me. Adam had a house, 2 cars, a boat, multitude of friends. You know, he made good money. He was living the dream. At 24 years old, he was living the dream. The American dream.
The American dream is still alive and kicking in the oil and gas industry. It's one of the few places left where a guy can start out as a roughneck, work his way up to a rig manager, then all the way to the top, a VIP, $200,000 a year with only 2 years of college. And let me tell you what, you earn it. They don't let any jerk on board a drill rig. Well, maybe I was the exception. Here, this is Jason Anderson, 34-year-old tool pusher. That's where he was headed, top management, a talented man. Jason's father, Bill, he was an oil field man, too.
Yeah, I taught high school and coached football for 9 years. I was a head coach, had 7 assistant coaches. I drove a bus, coached football, and taught high school. And I made a grand total of $13.5 a year with 2 college degrees. One summer, I took a job for a guy up in El Campo who had a little oil field service company, and my first week's check is bigger than a full month's pay coaching and teaching. So at the end of the summer, a guy says, well, why don't you just stay here? I said, okay, I will. That's just what I told Jason when he came to me and said he wanted to work offshore. He said,
college isn't for me, Dad, but I think I could do this.
And I said, if you're gonna do it, Jason, do it right.
I will, Dad. I will.
And he did. He kept moving up, moving up. He's probably one of the youngest tool pushers out there. He had his 401k rocking. He bought Transocean stock. He was listening. You never know as a father if your kids are actually listening to you, but he was. This industry did right by my son, and he believed in it, like I do, like I still do. A guy wants to make a decent living in this country, you should not stand in his way.
Like father, like son. You said you're going to meet with Gordon's father, Keith Jones, too? That's a good idea.
My son, Gordon, he wasn't really like the other guys out there. We are not blue-collar people. Mud engineer was not what Gordon was. It was what he did, and he was good at it. If he wasn't good at it, he wouldn't have been on the Deepwater Horizon. And we now look at that rig, all the mistakes that were made. It's got this terrible reputation, which it now, of course, deserves. But before this happened, there wasn't a more prestigious rig to work on in the Gulf of Mexico. My fraternity brother, Tom, got Gordon set up in the job, got him into mud school, and behind the scenes looked out for him. I remember Tom talking about the prestige of being on that rig.
Keith, you have to understand something. These guys on the Deepwater rigs are the fighter pilots of our profession. They're the rock stars. The very best of the best work on the Deepwater rigs.
That sounded good to me. I never knew much about oil drilling before all this. Not like I do now. You have this drill bit that's grinding through rock and sand and shale. It's cutting through, and the drilling fluid that lubricates the drill bit and fills up the hole is called mud. The weight of the mud is what keeps the oil in the ground when you're drilling. Mud is a mixture of chemicals, and it's very valuable. It turns out maybe even more valuable than a man's life. After he'd been to mud school, Gordon said,
Dad, you find oil, everybody gets a bonus. Even the cooks get bonuses. But you know, you see in the movies you strike oil and the oil goes gushing out the top of the well like that? When that happens, everybody gets fired.
Gordon didn't use the term blowout, but that's what he was telling me. Now, I'll never know for sure, but not too long before the explosion, BP brought out a company man, the senior man with BP. He calls the shots, and he had the tool pusher putting a lot of pressure on the drill bit to drill faster and faster. He was sent to the rig to say,
hey, we gotta get this well finished to move on to the next one.
Well, the tool pusher disagreed with him.
You can't drill 85 feet per hour on a well like this. Not here. That's way too fast. That's like driving 100 miles an hour in a blinding rain. That's insane.
Well, that tool pusher was Jason Anderson, and he was overruled. He was told,
you got an engineering degree to back that up, son?
So, tool pusher did what he said, and as a result, they had what they call on the rig lost returns. That means that he drilled through the rock formation so it cracked open at the bottom. They lost all of the drilling mud. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of mud that leaked out in this crack in the bottom of the well out into the center of the earth into nowhere. Lost forever. Lost returns. That's what they call it. Lost returns.
Then he paused for a long time, and then he said,
Gordon's grandfather was a trial lawyer. I'm a trial lawyer. His brother is a trial lawyer, but Gordon could have never been a lawyer. In order to be a successful litigator, you have to have a mean bone in your body somewhere. And Gordon didn't have that. He just didn't have it. But I do. I want to see justice in this case. I want BP to pay for what it did.
When I went to work for this industry out of New Iberia, Louisiana, as a drill rig worker, roustabout, life was pretty simple. Our equipment was dangerous, yes, but it was all on the surface. You could walk up, poke it, kick it, get a wrench out and fix it. You could see a leak before it became catastrophic. Well, You fast forward to the Deepwater Horizon, that oil rig is hovering. It's not tied to the seafloor at all. Water's too deep. It's got giant thrusters, diesel engines that hover this 2 football field-sized piece of equipment 20 stories high over a location on the seafloor. Imagine a New York City skyscraper floating out in the middle of the open ocean. That's what it's like out there. But then it gets interesting, because then you drill 3 miles below the ocean floor, and you're going to Macondo. And that is like tapping into a nuclear reactor core. The earlier time, simpler. You look at that, and then you look at the picture today. Looks like the NASA control room, Houston, in that drill shack. And, by the way, we haven't changed our thinking much between those 2 stops.
Lillian Miller was haunted. She wanted to talk. Sure, April 20th, 2010. Day of the blowout. I'll never forget that day. They were finished drilling at Mississippi Canyon. They were preparing to move location. The job was basically done. The part that doesn't add up, by all accounts, this was an extremely gifted crew. The best in the industry. So if this was going to happen, it should not have happened to them.
Raise your right hand, sir.
The Coast Guard had these rig guys testifying just a few weeks after that blowout. I made a timeline of events.
Mr. Harrell, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Jimmy Harrell, the OIM, the offshore installation manager with Transocean. Their top man on the rig. BP is the leaseholder for the well, but they hired Transocean to do the drilling.
Mr. Harrell, could you briefly take us through the day of the incident?
Okay.
And we understand that April 20th, 2010 was the day you were scheduled to finish the job at Macondo and move on to the next well?
That's right. It was the last day of operations out there.
Well, we also understand that there were visitors on board the Deepwater Horizon on the day of the incident.
Yes, sir. We had a lot of visitors come out that day. Came out on a noon helicopter from BP and Transocean. Spent the bigger part of the day, talking with them.
Who were they?
Well, it was Pat O'Brien, David Sims, Don Winslow, and Buddy Trahan. Don and Buddy were the Transocean, the other 2 were the BP.
And why were they there, sir?
Well, we had made 7 years, no lost time incident, and they wanted to congratulate us on that.
No lost time. Can you explain that for the record, please?
For 7 years, we lost no work time on the rig due to injury, not a single minute.
What happened when the executives arrived?
Well, I was there to greet them at the chopper. Welcome to the Deepwater Horizon, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It'll be a quick turnaround, 24 hours, but we'll show you everything. We'll take you down the drill floor, up to the bridge. You'll get a real feel for things out here.
Sounds good.
Short.
Sounds good. And operations?
We finally ran the last casing string yesterday. We had full returns on the cement job early this morning. All we have left to do is a negative pressure test, then displace the mud with seawater, and we're ready to move on to the next well.
Wait, Jimmy, no CBL. You have to test the cement bond on a job like this. We always do. Test the cement bond.
That was BP's call. You better take it up with them. Okay, gentlemen, let's get your room assignments, get you settled in.
Okay, thanks.
Hey.
Okay, Mr. Harrell. So this drilling and exploration job on board the Deepwater Horizon was 47 days late. Is that correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
47 days behind schedule.
Yes, ma'am.
And what's the day rate on that? How much does it cost to drill a well in deep water?
Day rate on drilling is about $525 a day.
$525,000 per day.
That's right.
Would you say there was any pressure on you to complete the job?
Now, Jimmy Harrell had a lawyer sitting next to him when he was testifying. Just listen to this.
Well, what should I say about any pressure? Say no. No.
There was no pressure, being about $20 million behind on the well.
What do you think?
You gotta say no.
No, ma'am.
Are you sure, Mr. Harrell?
Not on me for sure, or my people.
Did it concern you that BP was regularly changing its drilling plans on the Deepwater Horizon, particularly in the immediate days prior to the incident?
Well, a lot of it was based on they were scared they were going to lose returns, We had lost a lot of mud on this job.
So you had lost returns before on this well?
It was several cases, yes. We lost the mud. Took a couple of kicks, too. We had a stuck pipe on one occasion.
I just want to clarify one last time. You're losing mud, you're taking kicks, You're 47 days late, and the only reason BP's vice president of drilling and completions and his counterpart were on the rig was to congratulate you on your safety record.
Yeah.
They can say that the visit from the VIPs didn't affect operations, but when the wheels come out to the rig, it's not lost on anyone that those are the guys who can fire people.
State your name for the record, sir.
Miles Randall Ezell, also known as Randy.
Randy Ezell, senior tool pusher with Transocean, second in command on the rig after Jimmy Harrell.
Mr. Ezell, I want to ask you a few questions from the drill crew perspective. Is that okay?
Okay.
Mr. Ezell, how old a man are you?
57.
I think you said you started going offshore when you were...
I was 21.
What was it like to go out to an offshore rig for the first time?
Well, I'm looking for the word. Intimidating? Me and another guy were starting out as roustabouts, and when we landed, there was a gentleman there to greet us. He looked at the guy next to me and he said, "You see that man up there in that derrick? I need you to be able to do that job in 3 months. You think you can do it?" And he said, "No, sir, I'm scared of heights." And he looked at me and he said, "What about you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I can do it." I knew I could.
And you did?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Ezell, I'm going to show you a photo, and I would like you to describe what you see.
There she is, Deepwater Horizon. We sailed that rig as a crew, part of the way from Korea, where she was built, over to the Gulf of Mexico. Sailed her under our own power. My drill team, we were very proud of the wells we drilled. We drilled a well once at 30,050 feet, which was a record. We held the water depth record, too, held it for a while. And together, we drilled some 50 wells from that maiden well, all the way to Macondo.
Mr. Ezell, from the drill crew perspective, what's the risk if a driller misses a kick?
Well, the ultimate risk. He could lose his life.
Before April 20, 2010, was your drill crew aware of that?
We were all highly aware of that.
Had you ever missed a kick before April 20, 2010?
We had not.
Now, you were the senior tool pusher on the Deepwater Horizon, but who were the other tool pushers on that rig at the time of the incident?
It was Wyman Wheeler and Jason Anderson.
And you knew them both well, is that correct?
Wyman and Jason both. I had worked with them a lot of years, 8 or 9 years. They were like brothers to me and to each other.
And you knew their families well?
Yes, I did. Jason's wife, Shelley, she's called me a few times, but I haven't been able to return her calls. That could have been any one of us out there. You asked me before, did we miss a kick that night? We had never missed a kick.
People say all kind of things when someone you love dies in a situation like this. They say time heals all wounds. Don't get me started on that one. I always want to say, oh yeah? Well, what if it doesn't? What if time doesn't do anything except remind you every single day of what you lost? And that man, oh, I am telling you, he was funny. Jason was a funny man. After we'd been dating for a while, everyone had me convinced that he was going to propose to me on Valentine's Day. He took me to dinner, and I kept checking the breadbasket for a ring. Then I checked the bottom of my drink, thinking maybe he'd drop it in there. I even ate the raw oysters all daintily, thinking somehow he slipped the ring in one of them. I got up to go to the bathroom 5 times. I kept ordering drinks. I even tore my pantyhose on the way out of the restaurant. I was so drunk. And then I took them off in the truck and threw them out the window. 2 weeks later, he was cleaning out his guns, had them all out on the table, and we were having people over at his place, and I said, "You got to put these guns away, they got kids." And when I opened the door to the gun closet, there was the bag from the jeweler sitting right there. He picked it up and he handed it to me, and he said,
"You want this?"
And I said, "Yes, I do. Receipt still in the bag and everything." That was Jason. You asked me before if I knew they were having trouble on that rig. I didn't know about any trouble on that rig because Jason never told me about any trouble on that rig. He wanted to protect me, I know he did. I did talk to Jason that night, right before that last shift. See, life on the rig pretty much goes like this. Guys work out, they take a shower, and they eat first, but then they always call home to their wives. Jason always called home.
"Hi, baby. I only got a minute on the phone. Just wanted to call, say goodnight."
Jason, the kids are driving me crazy. How are you doing out there?
Fine. Everything's fine.
You don't sound too good.
Everyone out here's in a big hurry, Shell. BP's plan is calling for simultaneous operations during displacement. You're only supposed to keep your eye on one thing at a time.
I don't know.
You go step by step when you're finishing a well. One operation at a time. That's how I was taught. Everything's happening too fast out here.
I don't understand.
Look, I can't really get into it too much right now.
You can tell me.
The walls are too thin, you understand?
Jason, you okay?
I gotta go now, baby. Gotta get us off this well. Gotta get us all home in one piece, all right? I love you.
Love you too. The walls are too thin. That's what he told me. The walls are too thin.
Now, Mr. Ezell, we've heard from several sources now that there were visitors on board the Deepwater Horizon on the day of the incident. What can you tell us about your dealings with the VIP group?
We were going to have a general tour of the rig with those individuals. We did conduct that tour. We went to several different areas on the rig. One of the last areas we went to was the drill floor.
The blowout occurred around 10 p.m. that night. It's now about 5:30 p.m. in the drill shack. Christopher Pleasant, subsea supervisor with Transocean, testified.
Mr. Pleasant, what can you tell us about what happened when you arrived on the drill floor for your shift change?
When I arrived on the drill floor, I was talking with my supervisor, and he was explaining to me that they had just finished a negative pressure test.
I understand, Mr. Pleasant, that they were having some issues with the negative test?
Yes, ma'am. The negative pressure test checks the integrity of your cement job. Is your cement plug holding or not? And the tool pusher, Wyman Wheeler, was convinced that something wasn't right. He said...
It doesn't make sense. We're getting too much mud back.
He was talking with Bob Calusa, BP company man. He was telling him...
We shouldn't be getting any flow. There should be no backflow if the cement job's holding.
So he and Bob talks back and forth. Bob telling him the mud is under balance. That's all.
No, that's not it.
That's just when Wyman's relief comes onto the drill floor, which is Jason Anderson. So Wyman's explaining to Jason...
I don't know, Jason. We're getting mud back. We can't explain everything we're seeing. Something not right.
Okay, Wyman, I'll check it out. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Now, at this time, you had the crew changing out and the crew coming in. And that's exactly when the tour with the VIPs arrived. That drill shack was getting very crowded.
Mr. Ezell, tell us what happened when you arrived on the drill floor.
When we arrived on the drill floor, we observed that they were having a discussion. They had some mud in the riser. Jimmy Harrell took a look at it and told them,
Yeah, you always get some mud back, just don't want too much. Just increase the pressure, tighten it up, that'll take care of it.
And when they did increase the pressure, it was rock steady. Seemed to be okay.
Mr. Pleasant, tell us what happened next.
And Don Vidrine, he's the other BP company man. Now, he comes to the drill floor. Him and Bob Calusa talks back and forth. Bob filling him in. Then Don tells us, let's everybody just stop for a minute, go call Houston, tell them we're going to do a second negative pressure test, okay? And that's what he did.
Mr. Ezell, were you there for the phone call to Houston?
No, I had gone outside for a minute. I was going to let them have their discussion, let them have their changeover. And when I came back in, Jason, he said...
They're calling for a second negative test, okay?
You need my help?
Oh, Randy, why don't you go eat with the suits?
Well, I can eat and come back.
Man, you ain't got to do that. You got this. If we have any problem at all, I'll give you a call.
Mr. Ezell, if there weren't any visitors on board, would you have stayed in the drill shack?
Yes, sir. And I wouldn't be here talking to you now.
Why didn't you stay in the drill shack, sir?
Well, I knew Jason well. I had no doubt that if he had any difficulty at all, he would have called me. I went ahead and ate. I did attend the meeting with the dignitaries.
And let me tell you what. Some of those executives on board that day, those visiting VIPs, had more knowledge and experience than anyone else on that rig. And instead of staying in the drill shack to figure out what was going wrong, they held a meeting to congratulate them on their safety record and gave away a watch. One of the BP men, Pat O'Brien, addressed the group.
I came out here today having heard all about the great wonder, the marvel of this rig and its crew. I have to be honest, I thought that these claims might be exaggerated. But I stand here this evening convinced the Deepwater Horizon is the pride of our fleet, our best exploration rig. And this crew has found a lot of oil.
That's right, yes.
But back on the drill floor...
Line up your gauges. Let's start this test.
We're starting to bleed the pressure down. Coming down. Down. Okay, I got 0.
Okay, Jason. Shut it in. Let's see if it holds.
And in the safety meeting?
The Gulf of Mexico is a world-class hydrocarbon basin with a bright future. To date, approximately 18 billion barrels of oil have been discovered in deep water, with an estimated 20 billion barrels of yet-to-find potential. The fiscal environment in the Gulf of Mexico is one of the most attractive and stable in the world.
Okay, I got about 15 barrels back. Pressure's rising on the drill pipe, 700 psi and rising.
What about the kill line?
0 and holding steady. The backflow is slowed. The pressure is still going up on the drill pipe, up to 1400 psi.
But 0 on the kill line?
0 and holding.
Those different pressure readings. This is a sign that something is desperately wrong.
At BP, we have a mantra. Every rig minute counts. Time is money. Every minute matters.
Let's hold up. We need to get Houston on the phone.
BP company man Don Vidrine managed to stop this $500,000-a-day operation for 1 hour while they debated the results on that test. And then he called Mark Halfley in Houston. And Mark Halfley said,
"You can't have pressure on the drill pipe and 0 pressure on the kill line. That's not possible."
Mark, I watched the kill line for 30 minutes. I didn't see a drip come out.
You look. Maybe you trapped some pressure in the line, or you didn't have the valve lined up right.
No, we did it right.
Look, according to what you're telling me, if the well was going to blow out, it would have already blown out. Get it done.
Now, we have the real-time data on this. That last phone call lasted for 10 minutes. Everything that happened after that was like marching into death. They had missed a kick.
BP has many operations, and some of them are very dangerous. Only 43 wells, the complexity of Macondo, have ever been drilled in the world. Deep water drilling is the highest risk across the entire corporation. It is also the highest reward. A toast to the best performing rig in the Gulf of Mexico.
To the best performing rig in the Gulf of Mexico.
Mr. Ezell, what happened after the meeting with the executives?
Well, I was feeling pretty good from the meeting on how good a job we had done, how proud they were of this rig. I went to the galley and got something to drink. I looked at my watch. It was 9:20. I called Jason up on the drill floor. How did your negative test go, Jason?
It went okay. We bled it off, Randy. We watched it for 30 minutes and we had no flow.
And what about the displacement? How's it going?
It's going fine. It won't be much longer.
Do you need any help?
Oh, man, I got this. You've been working 18 hours. That's insane. Go to bed. I've got it.
Jason was very acute on what he did. He probably had more experience as far as shutting in for kicks than any individual on the Deepwater Horizon. I called my wife. I turned out the lights to watch a bit of TV before going to sleep.
After dinner, the visitors made one last stop on their tour to the bridge of the Deepwater Horizon. The bridge is really the showpiece of the rig. It's magnificent from up there. It was a beautiful night. Water was calm. Sky was full of stars. Andrea Fleytas, Dynamic Positioning Officer with Transocean, the DPO. One of only 3 women out of a crew of 126 on board that night. She testified too.
Miss Fleytas, tell us what happened on the night of April 20, 2010.
The executives were there with us on the bridge. My senior DPO was giving them a tour. He was explaining to them how the rig's thrusters keep the vessel in place above the well. He was showing off the radars and current meters. And I don't know who, but someone offered to let the visiting BP men try their hand at the rig's dynamic positioning video simulator.
You mean to tell me they were playing a video game?
That's one way to put it.
What happened next?
I felt a jolt. It just came out of nowhere. When the rig jolted, I looked at my thruster pages. We had calm seas, no weather. It wasn't our thrusters. There was a series of combustible gas detectors, alarms that went off. The senior DPO turned the camera, and that's when I witnessed mud coming from the starboard side. Mud, showering down like black rain. The drill floor called and told me,
We have a well control situation.
This is the moment you hope will never happen in your entire life.
I repeat, we have a well control situation.
I noticed that I had magenta on the combustible gas alarm screens. Magenta is the highest importance alarm. Then, the engine control room called me and they said, What is going on? I told them we have a well control situation.
My room phone rang. On the other end of the line was the assistant driller, Steve Curtis, saying,
We have a situation.
Then Steve said, I'll never forget, he said,
Randy, we need your help.
I said, Steve, I'll be right there.
Christopher Pleasant testified.
I had gone back to my office to save all my paperwork to the computer, and an assistant driller sitting next to me, he said,
Chris, what's that water?
But normally, when you're displacing, you got water in the drill pipe. You break a joint, water come out, it's nothing.
Chris, I see mud.
I seen Buddy Trahan right there at my door. He says, what's going on? I said, I don't know. We gotta go. We took off running.
None of those guys had ever seen mud through the derrick before. Mike Williams testified.
Mr. Williams.
Yes, I heard a bang. I heard a hiss. I'm hearing through the ventilation system, the engine control room panel, beep, 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 one behind the other. Just as fast as they can hit the button to acknowledge the alarm, they're beeping again.
I opened my door and I remember a couple people standing in the hallway, but I kind of had tunnel vision. I looked straight ahead.
I hear the engine number 3, start to increase in speed. It was going faster and faster and faster. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on in there?
Another survivor, Steve Bertone, testified.
I heard what sounded like a freight train coming through my bedroom.
The lights began to increase in brightness and all the lights pop. When I say pop, I mean the bulbs themselves exploded. Glass is flying everywhere.
I felt the rig actually shake.
I know I need to get out. I grabbed for the handle of the door.
I made it to the doorway of the tool pusher's office.
A big whoosh, and then a huge percussion.
An initial boom.
Then a tremendous explosion occurred. It blew me probably 20 feet against the bulkhead against the wall in that office.
Both me and that door ended up on the other side of the shop.
The rig blacked out.
I could hear everything. Deathly calm.
Jason and the guys in the drill shack were shutting it in when it blew. They did everything they were supposed to do. This was the moment of Jason's death.
But it was too late.
The PA system crackled to life. Fire! Fire! Fire!
There was a lot to take in. There was a lot going on. I was trained to signal the general alarms if there were 3 or more gas alarms in magenta. It was all magenta.
Every little fire extinguisher, every little spray can was going off like a rocket. Steel was melting down around him.
I turned to get my clothing, my boots, my hat, when a second explosion occurred. Threw me across the room.
It blew the other door off its hinges.
I jumped up and I ran into the hallway.
I made a decision that the rig wasn't gonna kill me. I was gonna get outside and find out what in the world was going on.
I hollered out, "Go to your emergency stations," and made my way to the bridge.
My equipment was on the bridge, the EDS, Emergency Disconnect System, to disconnect the rig from the well. Now, I knew I had to get there as fast as I could. This whole rig was about to blow. I heard popping, I saw ceiling tiles falling. I just don't remember the Big Bang.
My next recollection was that I had a lot of debris on top of me. I tried 2 different times to get up, but the debris, it was a substantial weight. I told myself, Randy, either you get up, you're gonna lay here and die. I pulled it as hard as I could, and it came free. I attempted to stand up, immediately stuck my head into smoke. Got on my hands and knees, then I felt something that felt like air. I said to myself, I need to go. That leads out. I could feel droplets. It was moist on the side of my face. What I thought was air was actually methane gas. As I was crawling, I put my hand down on what felt like a person, and it was Wyman Wheeler. I saw a beam of light, like a flashlight bouncing. The light was going up and down. Jimmy Harrell, the OIM, came out of his room. He was gritting his eyes really hard, and he said,
Insulation got blown in my eyes. I can't see.
Jimmy, I got Wyman down right here.
I gotta find me some shoes. I just got out the shower. My eyes are burning. My eyes are on fire.
I was thinking to walk Wyman out. Well, he made a couple steps, and he said, set me down. Y'all go on, save yourself. No, we're not gonna leave you. We're not gonna leave you in here. I heard a voice. God help me. Somebody please help me. All I could see was a pair of feet sticking out from under a bunch of wreckage and debris. It was Buddy Trahan.
Chad Murray testified.
I had just come out of my shop when it exploded. I got my flashlight, and when I opened the pump room door, smoke blowed in my face. It was dark, smoky, stuff just scattered everywhere. When I looked back into the pump room, I knew it was time to evacuate that rig. I just came through that area. I saw Wyatt Kemp, Shane Rostow, Don Clark, and Adam Weise. They was in the pump room when it happened. They didn't make it.
I was running as fast as I could. I had to get to the bridge. That's where my equipment was. I knew I only had minutes left to get this rig off that well. I heard Chad Murray say,
"Don't go that way. Don't go into the pump room. Something bad just happened in there."
He never did say what happened, and I didn't stop to look. I just kept running.
Both the guys in that pump room and the guys in the drill shack died instantly. The engine sucked in the methane gas and exploded. Those men had been incinerated. Then Steve Bertone arrived on the bridge.
I observed that we had no engines, no thrusters, no power whatsoever. I looked out the window, I saw fire.
I saw fire coming up from the drill floor all the way up through the derrick.
The fire was 600, 700, 800 feet in the air.
The senior DPO announced over the PA to report to emergency stations and lifeboats. The rig crew heard...
This is not true. This is not true.
I noticed that no one had hit any of the distress buttons. I issued a mayday.
I heard a watertight door bang. I heard someone say,
"The engine room, ECR, and pump room are gone. They're all gone."
I turned around. What do you mean gone?
They've blown up. They're all gone. They've blown up.
I recognized his voice. It was Mike Williams. He had a laceration across his forehead. I hollered out, "We need a medic!"
And then the captain looked at me and I told him, "Sir, we need to go. We need to abandon ship right now. We are not going to have power. We have no way to get away from the fire, from the fuel."
Mayday, mayday, mayday! This is the Deepwater Horizon. We are on fire. I repeat, we are on fire.
When I turned around, I saw Chris Pleasant. He was at the EDS panel, the emergency disconnect system, to disconnect the rig from the well. I hollered to Chris, "I need confirmation that we've EDS'd." He said,
"Yes, we've EDS'd. Everything did like it was supposed to do at the panel. All the lights lit up, but the signal, it never left the panel. We had no hydraulics, no power. We were a dead ship."
I started to my emergency station. That's when we found Buddy Trahan, Randy Ezell, and Wyman Wheeler. It looked like a tornado went through there.
When we saw Chad, we shouted out, "Go to the bow, get us a stretcher." We load Buddy on the stretcher. It was not easy. There was a lot of debris. I said to Chad, go get a stretcher for Wyman. I'll stay here. I told Wyman I wasn't going to leave him, and I didn't.
The captain was standing outside the bridge, looking down at the lifeboat station. I saw that lifeboat number 1 was driving away. Lifeboat number 2 had already gone. I said, "That's it, abandoned ship. The lifeboats are leaving without us. Let's go!"
It seemed like an eternity, but they finally come back with a second stretcher. I knew they would. That's what I told Wyman. They'll come back. They'll come back. We took Wyman to the bow of the rig.
We made our way to the lifeboat deck.
When we come back out, we seen that the lifeboats had left without.
The main lifeboats had already been deployed.
Okay, everybody, head to the davit.
We turned and went for the life raft. We crank it up out of its lift, rotate it around to the side of the rig, and then drop it out, clear the rig.
We fell trying to get the stretcher in.
It's not that easy to board a life raft with it sitting there swinging.
There were a lot of explosions still going on, smaller explosions and immense heat. The flames and the heat were meeting in some kind of vortex or something right there. The life raft dipped, started rocking back, forth.
We were lowered down. I remember the heat.
The next thing I knew, the life raft was descending rapidly. The smoke cleared out.
The life raft was free falling, and I honestly believed we were all going to die.
Some was left behind.
When the life raft hit the water, I fell out. The water was on fire. I was swimming away from the rig, from the fire.
There was smoke bellowing out from under the rig.
The rest jumped 20 stories.
I saw a person's boots and his clothing come shooting through the smoke. Within seconds, another pair of boots and person came flying out of the smoke. I looked up at the rig. I witnessed an individual running at full speed across the helideck. When he jumped off the end of the helideck, he was still running.
I remember closing my eyes and saying a prayer and asking God to tell my wife and my little girl that Daddy did everything he could. And if I survive this, it's for a reason. I made those 3 steps, and I pushed off the end of the rig, and I fell for what seemed like forever.
He splashed into the water. It was Mike Williams.
I went down way below the surface, and when I popped back up, I felt like, okay, I've made it. But then I feel this god-awful burning all over me, and I'm thinking, am I on fire? So I start doing the only thing I know how to do, swim. I gotta start swimming. I gotta get away from this thing. I could tell I was floating in oil and grease and diesel fuel. I mean, just the smell and the feel of it. And I remember looking under the rig and seeing the water on fire. And I thought, what have you done? You were dry and you weren't covered in oil up there. Now you've jumped and you've landed in oil. The fire's gonna come across the water and you're gonna burn up. And I thought, you just gotta swim harder. So I swam, and I kicked, and I swam, and I kicked, and I swam as hard as I could until I remember not feeling any more pain. And I thought, well, I must have burned up, because I don't feel anything, I don't hear anything, I don't smell anything. I must be dead. And then I remember a real faint voice of, over here, over here. And I thought, what in the world is that?
It was a rescue boat from the Damon Bankston. It was our supply boat that was out there. They came and pulled us out of the water.
And the next thing I know, someone grabbed my life jacket and flipped me over into this small open bow boat. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know where he'd come from. I didn't care. I was now out of the water.
And let me tell you what. If it had been 10 or 12-foot seas, no one would have lived. There's no way, with fire on the water, with floors blown out, with ceilings blown out, people jumping overboard into 12-foot seas. If there had been 10 or 12-foot seas, even a 5-foot sea, no one. They would not have been able to make it in that raft. Like I said, there is no remorse to the well.
We got cocky. We've been so successful, we've drilled thousands of these damned wells. We're so good at this, we convinced ourselves no likelihood of a blowout, no consequences of a blowout. Guess what happened? It blew out.
This was not the first blowout in the Gulf of Mexico, but it's the first when no oil company knew how to put it out.
Yeah, no one knew how to put it out.
No single oil company had ever experienced a major accident such as that which unfolded out there, so the failure was beyond their experience. It was a failure of imagination.
In the Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel, 100 Years of Solitude, the people in the city of Macondo believed that they could control the forces of nature, the natural world, through magic, magical thinking, the rise and fall of the city of Macondo. No one knew for certain where the limits of reality lay. Well, when they named this well Macondo, they had no idea how prophetic that name would be.
Yeah, we got cocky.
This is Spill by Leigh Fondakowski, directed by Martin Jarvis. Starring Elisa Bocanegra, Gilbert Glenn Brown, Nicholas Hormann, Travis Johns, Jane Kaczmarek, James Morrison, Darren Richardson, Kate Steele, and Mark Jude Sullivan. Episode 2 is out right now. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode of the Relativity series. From LA Theater Works, Susan Lowenberg, producing director, and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, bridging science and the arts in the modern world.